makeshift studio for today. Yes, we love a zit sticker. Shout out to masks for making me break out constantly all along here. Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to model professionally. I think there's so many perceptions of what modeling is like, and there really is no clear laid out pathway for what it's like to do this as a job. So I wanted to share my experience and also bring in my really awesome agent to explain more about the process and about some of the industry lingo. I think with most creative careers, there is really no one way that it happens. So I want to share my story so that you can hear how I got into modeling, how I got signed by an agent, and what took me from A to B. First off, I want to clarify that the type of modeling that I do is mostly digital and print commercial modeling. That is different from runway. I am 5'7", which is a little too short for runway modeling. Usually that's like 5'8" and up. And I am not talking about social media marketing. I'm not talking about Instagram modeling necessarily. I'm talking about brands who typically contact my agent and we make a deal in order for me to model for a brand. That is not to say that I haven't had my fair share of modeling for people on social media, and that's actually part of what got me into modeling more professionally. First off, my mom was somebody who enrolled me in modeling and acting from a relatively young age. When I was in middle school, she took me to this huge casting call in San Francisco. I was scouted by an agent, and I do this because this was the classic what an agent is not supposed to do story. So this agency told my mom that if we gave them a certain amount of money, they would enroll us in all these classes and that they would have the connection in order to book me gigs. I never got booked a gig. They ended up paying, I think, thousands of dollars, at least over $1,000. And I took some classes as like a 13-year-old and never booked any jobs. I just remember going to some classes. While I think maybe they were a little bit helpful for my technique and for my confidence at the time, they didn't really get me any professional experience. The way that legit agencies work is that they hire talent and that they submit you to these jobs and they get a percentage of whatever you make from that job. The average is 20%. Move into high school time, I started doing pageants. While that's not a very traditional modeling path in order to do like commercial and digital advertising, I credit pageantry with getting me very spatially aware with my body, with posing. You know, being on stage in a bathing suit makes you very conscious about how you need to face the judges and face the camera, and honestly it actually had a lot to do with my mental confidence as well. Moving into college, I was kind of my own agent, not in a super high-level professional way, but a friend of a friend would know that I am comfortable in front of the camera. They would ask me to do a job. I was mostly doing things just for fun and really started to branch out and do more creative photography. This is also around the time that Instagram was starting to pop off a little bit more. So I was just shooting for fun, really. I think that that's important because really the practice in front of the camera is super necessary. Doing shoots for fun also helps build your portfolio, and you have that content in order to start submitting to brands, to agents, or whoever you're trying to model with. I decided to start submitting myself to agencies in about 2017. I literally just like Googled local agencies in San Diego and was submitting the photos that I had from shooting creatively. I didn't hear back from anybody. Come 2018, I got a DM from my first agency, which was Minelli Model Management at the time, and they wanted to sign me on an open contract. We'll get a little bit more into the different kinds of contracts that agencies can offer when we're talking to my agent. 2018 is when I started going out to auditions in LA and booking gigs for the first time. At the end of 2018, I moved to New York, not for modeling reasons, just for personal reasons. I took a similar approach as I did the first time and just started applying to a bunch of agencies out there. Through a mutual friend, I got booked to another agent out there, and I believe they were more acting based than they were modeling based. A lot of the auditions that I ended up going on were speaking lines for commercials. I think it was a good experience, and it got me a little bit more comfortable to doing more acting roles. I was going to a bunch of auditions, I even got some callbacks, but I didn't end up booking anything, and I was with them for about a year. I wanted to highlight this reality of modeling. Being signed to one agent, I would go on auditions as frequent as twice a week to once a month to maybe once every other month. It really depends on what my agent is submitting me to, and even if I'm frequently going to auditions, that doesn't mean that I land the gig. It may take multiple auditions before I actually book a job. And going to a bunch of auditions is part of the hustle of modeling. Come 2020, come COVID, I've moved back to San Diego, and modeling wasn't necessarily on the forefront of my mind when it came to finding a job again. Somebody was reaching out to me to give me a paycheck for a previous modeling job I had done a couple years ago, and in order to explain this, I'm going to share how models make money. Typically, we're paid a rate for our time and a rate for the usage of our images. We can get booked for fitting days, we can get booked for half a day, we can get booked for full days of work, which can go into overtime. The usage is where and how long the brands will be using the images. Whether it's used for 1 year or more, online or in store, locally or worldwide, these things will determine how much you get paid for that job. If they want to continue using your work after your usage time is up as stated in your contract, then they will need to pay you again for your images. So come 2020, I'm being contacted for a job that I did back in 2018 who wants to use the photos that we did together from 2 years ago because the lease was up on that content. They were asking me where to send my check because technically my agent should be getting a cut of that. I told them I wasn't with that previous agent anymore, and they asked me if I was interested in being signed to a new agency. And that's how I got signed with my current agency called Minelli Model Management, who have been nothing but the absolute best to me in the time that we've been signed for a few months now. I want to highlight some of the key takeaways from my very brief modeling history that I shared with you. The first one is to become aware and confident of your skills as a model. I have dipped my toes in and out of modeling from the time that I was about 13 years old, so when it came time for me to model professionally, I felt confident in my skills, not only like physically the way that I show up, but also mentally and emotionally, because modeling can encompass all of that. I think earlier on in your modeling, it can be kind of uncomfortable in front of a camera because it's like, where do I put my hands? Does my face look okay? Like, how should I position my body? And if you're deciding to do this professionally, it is just like any other job. You have to know what you're doing once you get on set or once you're hired. You know, there is no like showing up the day of and being like, oh, am I doing this right? Like, it's totally okay to be on set and receive notes from the director, from the photographer, or from the brand, like to make sure that you're meeting whatever their expectations are. There will always be that give and take whenever you're working with somebody, but you definitely can't show up and be like, I'm not really sure, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, there has to be that mental and emotional confidence when you show up. And I think that can be developed not just from doing a bunch of jobs for fun. It can be even just through looking at yourself in the mirror and figuring out what angles are best for you. It's taking pictures of yourself on self-timer, shooting with local photographers who also want to get practice. It's especially great if you can work with your friends and you can build together. There's so many different ways that you can become better in your skills, and I think that is a necessary practice before you really take it professionally. The second takeaway I want to give you from my story is to do what you can to expose yourself to agencies. Now, I say expose rather than just submitting to agencies, because you can submit your portfolio all day long to agencies, but it doesn't always happen like that, and that's not how it happened for me the first time. I was submitting myself to a bunch of agencies in LA and San Diego, and I didn't hear back from anybody. And it was because from shooting and posting my work online and even having other photographers post my work for me, and they want their content found, so they hashtag. I don't even know for sure what post it was that my first agency found me through, but because they saw me online, that's what motivated them to contact me to come in to then sign with them. Exposing yourself can mean submitting yourself to agencies. It can mean posting yourself online. It can mean working with brands, working with photographers, working with stylists who end up putting a word in to whoever their network is. It's just like any job in that it's who you know. When it comes to figuring out how to build your portfolio and who to shoot with and negotiating your own rates when you're first starting to figure out your modeling career, that is something that can be super tricky and I think is dependent on the individual. As I started to model more consistently, it was really because I enjoyed it. I love the creative process. I love coming up with how we can execute certain feelings, certain messages with the stylist, with the brand, with the photographer. And that give and take of ideas and energy can be a very tricky thing to navigate. Going into it, I really didn't know that many photographers, so I was open to shooting with almost anybody. And it was from shooting so often that I started to figure out what felt most comfortable for me. I was shooting for free, or TFP, as you might see, which is time for prints, meaning I would shoot with them and they would give me prints or the photos for my portfolio. I think giving yourself creatively can be draining sometimes, and I was starting to feel some of that after saying yes so much. So then that's when it turned from people DMing me saying let's shoot, that I would reply saying, oh, right now what did I say exactly? Something along the lines of, right now I'm really focused on building brand partnerships and being compensated for my time. So if there is a project in the future that we can work on together that's within this realm, then please keep me in mind. Most of the time it's just be okay, good to know, like it's really not that big of a problem. If you tell somebody like what you're looking for in exchange of your time, majority of the time they'll be respectful of that. And it was awesome too, because sometimes that person who was reaching out to me would then step it up, be like, okay, good to know that you're looking to do something like that. I know a brand, or I know so-and-so, or I can offer you X amount of money. And that's how I started to figure out what my time was worth and how to build my rates from there. Full transparency, I think the first rate that I started dishing out to people was that I wanted like $50 an hour, which now looking back on, $50 an hour is not enough. However, that was a really great place for me to start, and I definitely recommend doing that just to get comfortable with negotiating your rates and then building yourself up from there. Just like any other job, as you get more experience, as you become more confident in yourself, you start negotiating for more money. It went from $50 an hour to $100 an hour to $150 an hour. And I would also, throw things in there, like if I was working for a brand, like, oh, is there any product exchange? Is hair and makeup included? Is money for my transportation included? These are all things to factor in when you're negotiating your rates for a job. And I also want to add that, not every job has to be for money, because it all depends on what you're valuing from this exchange. I still have people DM me saying that they just want to shoot for fun, and I will shoot for fun if that seems like something that's fun for me. If I like their work, if I like their concept, if I feel like I want a more creative break from doing professional shoots over and over again, that is something that I deem valuable to me. And honestly, I think that is something that ends up feeding back into my professional work. I love executing creative ideas with other people who, want to execute these super cool things. And I'm so honored whenever people want to reach out and see me as a part of that project. It really does come down to where I'm at in my life, what I need, and what I'm available to do. When it comes down to it, it just needs to be whatever is most comfortable for you, what seems like a fair exchange of your time and your energy, and if this project is something that contributes to whatever goal that you're trying to reach. I know people that are freelance models and handle all the business side themselves, and if that's something that works for you, then by all means, all power to you. For me, having an agent to negotiate my professional jobs has been the most helpful for me. I want to share a story about how I was negotiating my rates for myself, and then how much I was able to get paid from involving my current agent. And this is how I learned not to negotiate hourly rates for modeling. When you're with an agent, they will only book you for half-day or full-day rates. I never fully understood why until this experience. So when I was contacted through a friend of a friend to model for this company, I was like, yeah, my rate is $150 an hour. And they're like, okay, yeah, we can totally do that. We're gonna book you for the full day. They ended up liking working with me, so they asked me to come back and work another job with them. And then by that time, the mutual friend was no longer on the project. It kind of like lost that personal relationship that I was kind of giving that like somewhat homey discount to, right? So now the company is inviting me back and they wanted to book me at the same rate. They're like, oh, can we do another half day at $150 an hour? And I was like, okay. I blocked off that time in my schedule, and we ended up getting the shot so fast that I only shot with them for 2 hours, even though I had blocked off 4 hours with them. I was going into it thinking, oh, I'm working with them for half of a day, so I'm gonna make $600 today. And so when I went home, they emailed me and they're like, oh, is it okay if we only pay you for those 2 hours since you only worked for those 2 hours? Not really knowing how to negotiate for myself, I was like, okay. And so they sent me a check for only $300. And that like did not feel good to me. I was like, why am I getting paid less for doing a better job? You know, it's like I was able to get the shots that they needed in a shorter amount of time. So like I did my job even better than they expected, but I'm getting paid half as much. And so that's when I was like, I should not be booking hourly for big companies like this. This company then contacts me for a third time and says, hey, we want to book you for the same job again. Are you available? And I had to, you know, like really step up for myself and be like, okay, but going forward, I realized that I need to book half day rates or full day rates. You know, for a half day, it'll be $600, for a full day more. And like, of course that can be scary to ask for more money, right? I felt super nervous, like switching up my rate on them, but they said yes, no question. Like, they're like, okay, yeah, for sure, we'll book you for the half day at $600. And I was just like, oh my God, like, why didn't I just say something the first time that they tried to pay me half, right? And that was a really valuable lesson for me. Fast forward like a year later, this company contacts me for a fourth time wanting to work together, but now I'm signed with my agency, my current agency. And then I told my agency, yes, before I was doing $600 for half of a day with them, and they negotiated the rates, and my agent got it to $1,000 for that job instead. Given they also get 20%, right? I ended up making $800, but still, I made $800 versus the $600 that I had tried to negotiate for myself. And now I have a professional that's keeping track of my usage from that shoot. And that is the beauty of having an agent.
My name is Maria Minelli. I've been an agent for 30 years now.
I'm Tabitha. I am newly an agent, but I do have a background in casting. I work directly with producers. I work directly with clients themselves. I've had like a more 360-degree view of a project.
The advice I could give you is just be yourself and be true and be genuine.
I only have my own experience. Here are some professionals who have been in the game for a long time and have a lot of knowledge that they can share with you.